I was reading a book. Are you ready, Matt? Okay. I was reading a book, and in this book, as opposites, it had complacency and contentment. Well, I always thought that they were basically the same thing. In one word, satisfaction. If you're complacent, you're satisfied with whatever. If you're content, you're satisfied with whatever. But they don't. And complacency is a feeling of being satisfied with our current personal effort in pursuing Christ. Now, is anybody here completely satisfied with how you're going after Jesus? It's not wanting to make things any better. It's a false sense of security. Contentment means that no matter what happens, you're fully satisfied in Jesus. The Bible states Christians are never to be standing still. So we can't be standing still, because if you're standing still, you're either growing or you're backing up. Tonight we're going to go to Nehemiah, the 9th chapter. And that's where most of this lesson comes from. And I'm going to recap and give a synopsis of the story of Nehemiah. Nehemiah was a Jew. He was captured by a Persian king. He became the cupbearer for the king. A cupbearer is a wine taster. So he tasted the wine and the food before he gave it to the king. Because if anybody was going to die, it was going to be him. They didn't want the king to die. He saw the king every day and had the king's confidence. And he had a special place with this king. But one day, a visitor came to Susa, which was the capital of Persia. And he said, "Man, you ought to see Jerusalem. It is in rubble. The walls are torn down. They have set fire to the gates. It's just a big fat mess." And it got Nehemiah so upset that he said, I am sad, because this was his hometown. And it would be like if your hometown got completely destroyed, you would be sad and upset. Well, that's how Nehemiah was. He said that he didn't know what to do about it. So what did he do? He fasted and he prayed and he pleads with God. The king notices Nehemiah is sad, and he's never seen him sad before and depressed. Nehemiah asked the king for a leave of absence so that he could go back to Jerusalem and repair the most sacred city to the Jewish people. The king gave Nehemiah what he wanted and more. So God had to be in it to get more. You know, sometimes when we pray to God, He doesn't just give us what we ask for. He makes it better. He gives us more. He left it once because it was over 1,000 miles to Jerusalem from Persia. And it took several months to get there. But the king had provided him with an armed guard, letters of introduction to the passing kings, and a way to get lumber and what they needed to rebuild the city. So Nehemiah gets there after many months on the road, And what's the first thing that he should do? Well, he has to assess the damages. He has to make a plan. And in any of our lives, if we're going on to build something or to assess something, we have to have a plan. So he goes, but he did not hesitate. He got there, and within 3 days, he was already at work. He met with the city leaders. He laid out his plan. He told them what the king had done for him. And amidst much opposition, the walls were restored and the gates were replaced with new massive wooden doors. Then he gathered the people for a great revival. Would you say Nehemiah was complacent, or was he content? Brooks Austin, editor-in-chief of the Texas Business Magazine, said, "We are truly," and I quote, "we are truly the lost generation, huffing and puffing down the fast track to nowhere, always looking to the dollar sign for direction. That's the only standard we recognize. We have no built-in beliefs, no ethical boundaries. Cheat on your taxes, just don't get caught. Cheat on your wife, just don't get AIDS. Simply use a condom." And he goes back as these people in Nehemiah were doing. He said, "Where did I go? What did I do wrong? Is the traditional wail of parents of kids gone wrong? Is that what the parents are saying? Well, what happened? Where did I go wrong with these kids?" The 80s version says, "We gave him everything: clothes, a computer, a car, a college education, everything but a conscience. We are products of a high-tech society, a moral automatons, outfitted with calculating brains and sleek casings, just like the computers with which we are so compatible. But they forgot to give us souls. What good is lolling in your jacuzzi in the beautiful backyard of your breathtaking home if you feel an aching emptiness in your innards, a chronic pain that all the wine coolers in the world can't numb? We are really slaves today in America, slaves in the land of the free and the home of the brave. What irony. In Nehemiah 9, we learn how to recover from that kind of situation. What can we, the people of God, do to help change this condition? They gathered before God to pray. They fasted. They wept. They asked for mercy. They did not blame others for their plight. And that is the basic number one thing people do. Well, you know, one time when my youngest grandson, not the youngest, the next to the youngest grandson was little, he was running around the house chasing the dog, and he tore down the curtains tore, and Richard went in there and he was fussing at him. And my grandson said, "The dog made me do it." Well, the dog did not make him run through the house and tear down the curtains. But we in society, we want to blame somebody else and something else for our failures, for our lack of whatever. So we can't look and blame other people. We have to look to themselves and confess sins and the wickedness of our fathers. And this is a hard lesson. It is real hard. It was hard for me to do because there are generational curses on each and every one of us that we have to break. We have to get rid of them, and we have to break them. Well, how do you break them? By just going to church, having that relationship with God, praying, fasting, and asking Him for mercy for us. In verses 5 to 15, they're all in Nehemiah. That is the longest prayer in the Bible. Nehemiah recaptures and reminds these people, you remember when you were there and where you are now. Yes, things may look kind of forlorn in the beginning, but not for long, because Nehemiah had a plan. But the people, in Nehemiah 9, 5b and 6, it said, blessed be your glorious name, and may it be exalted above all blessing and praise. You alone are the Lord. You made the heavens, even the highest heavens, and all their starry host, the earth and all that is on it, the sea and all that is in them. You give life to everything, and the multitudes of heaven worship you. We did not create ourselves. Thank God for your life and your breath. We didn't fashion this intricate body. Nobody, I don't care, a monkey or a fish or whatever, nobody could have done. And if I did not learn anything in nursing, it was this wonderful body. I love the human body. Never. Do you ever think of all the processes that are happening in your body? Right now, you're being kept alive, over which you have no control. The pacemaker in your mind that keeps your heart beating, you don't control that. It would be awful if you had to, wouldn't it? What if you forgot? Oh, heartbeat. Oh, heartbeat, heartbeat. What if you forgot? What about when you go to sleep? You can't tell it. The diaphragm that keeps you breathing in and out, in and out. Wouldn't it be terrible if you had to lie awake all night and say, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out? We ought to be grateful that God sustains us moment by moment. We ought to be grateful for that. Let us never forget that our very breath comes from Him. God is the keeper of promises. And I think George told me there was 5,800 or something like that. It is He who calls, chooses, and draws us to Himself. Not one of us would be here today if it were not for that merciful, sovereign call of God. He called each and every one of us. Why did He call you? Because He wanted that relationship. You're His child. If my children never call me and never talk to me, well, that would be sad for me. If we don't talk to Him, He is saddened by the fact that we don't want a relationship. We should want one. There was let me see what his name is. George Santayana, the Spanish philosopher. He was quoted as saying, and we've all used it at one time or another, he who forgets the past is condemned to repeat it. We have forgotten the lessons God taught us and gone right back to the same things over and over again, just like the Israelites did. They went back, and God would bail them out, and he would start blessing them, and they would get happy and go right back into sin. And he is so merciful and forgiving that he says, hey, I will take you back. Even though they rebelled against him, even though at the base of Mount Sinai, they made a golden image and declared it their God, he still showed mercy to them. This is the direction rebellion always takes. When you rebel against God, you invariably want to go back to the evil that you once were involved in. That is what Israel did. They actually wanted to go back to Egypt, back to the beatings and oppression by the heavy hand of the Pharaoh, back to slaving all day, making bricks without straw. They forgot all the bondage because they longed for the sensual pleasure of Egypt. That is how rebellion gets us. It makes it seem real pretty. You know, the beer commercials on TV, they have the best looking people. They're in skimpy clothing. And you say, hey, well, beer can't be too bad. I even saw a commercial last night for zero alcohol beer. They're making Budweiser's making zero alcohol. Well, why bother? You know, who likes the taste of beer? Have you recently looked back on your life and counted up the providential care of God in your experience? We tend to take God's blessings for granted and concentrate our attention on what we don't have. Well, I don't have this and I don't have that. Be content with what you have. Have you ever thanked God for the victories you have achieved in your life? Your promotions that you didn't expect to get? Your achievements at work or in your home? Have you stopped to revel in the goodness of God? That is the right thing to do. Recognize that God is with you. God's hand is in whatever you do. Give him glory for that, if for no other reason, because he is in control and he is there with you. What does he say? That he will never leave you or forsake you. How does God deal with people that treat him bad? They treat him and they abuse him. It's like in Nehemiah 9:26. Nehemiah reminds these people. They were disobedient and rebelled against you. They put your law behind their backs. They killed your prophets who had admonished them in order to turn them back to you. They committed awful blasphemies. Well, how did God deal with them? After he has blessed them abundantly and given them so much, what happens when they forget to give him glory and turn their backs on him? The other group tells us, so you handed them over to their enemies. This is Nehemiah 27. Who oppressed them. But when they were oppressed, they cried out for you. From heaven you heard them, and in your great compassion you gave them deliverers. who rescued them from the hand of their enemies. And he will go before you and take care of your enemies. But as soon as they were at rest, what happened in verse 28? But as soon as they were at rest, they again did what was evil in your sight. Then you abandoned them to the hand of their enemies, so that they ruled over them. And when they cried out to you again, you heard from heaven, and in your compassion you delivered them time after time. Well, you know what? He has delivered America time after time. Whether we want to believe it, whether we want to see it, but he has delivered us, and he's fed up. But as soon as, what a marvelous picture of a patience of God. He is so patient and loving and giving. You warned them to return to your law, but they became arrogant and disobeyed your commands. America became arrogant. And when 9/11 happened, we saw that arrogance kind of deflate, didn't we? And people said, hey, if people can come in here and blow New York to pieces and kill all these people, well, we better get a handle on this. So what did they do? They ran back to the church, the same as the Israelites did. They sinned against your ordinances, by which a man will live if he obeys them. Stubbornly they turned their backs on you, became stiff-necked, and refused to listen. For many years you were patient with them. This is 30 and 31. By your Spirit you admonished them through your prophets, yet they paid no attention. You handed them over to the neighboring people, but in your great mercy you did not put an end to them or abandon them, for you are a gracious and merciful God. This is where we see America today. The Old Testament repeated the story of Israel's captures, first by the Syrians, later by the Assyrians, and finally the Babylonians. God allowed these enemies to come in to make his people see what was happening, to wake them up to the damage being done. We are being woke up. We have been lulled into complacency. I told you it was a hard lesson. We are slaves in our own land and because of our own sins. This is where we find ourselves in America today. Our cities are torn with violence, strife, and drug wars of such intensity that people hardly go outside of their houses. We are slaves in our own land. The only recovery is to do as these people did, confess our wrongdoings to God and praise him for his compassionate mercy. These Levites teach us how to confess. Notice how specific they are. We did wrong. You have acted faithfully, but we did wrong. We did not pay attention to your laws. We did not hear your words. Some Christians think that they are confessing when they say, Lord, if I have injured any soul today, if I have caused some foot to go astray, if I have walked in my own willful way, dear Lord, forgive. But that is not a confession. There is no if in true confession. You do not say, if I did this or if I did that. You say, Lord, I did it. I failed you. I turned aside. I forgot your word. I walked in my own willful way. Then God hears, forgives, and restores. That is his gracious nature. That is what he wants to do. We are in the same place today. We see the same two themes at work: the rebellion and the indifference of man, and the gracious, loving patience of God, until he is at last forced to take action. He is waiting to pardon us when the wrong of our life is faced. And when we look at 2 Chronicles 7:14, and it says, if my people, he's talking to us, if my people. So, people, are we content? Was Nehemiah content, or was he complacent? We'll look again. What does the Bible say about complacency? In Proverbs 1:32 it said, for the waywardness of the simple will kill them, and the complacency of fools will destroy them. Zephaniah 1:12 said, at that time I will search Jerusalem with lamps and punish those who are complacent. He does not want us complacent. You have to stand for right. You have to say, this is wrong. When I think of complacency, I think of my own guilt, because we know abortion is against God. It is murder. And he tells us, thou shalt not kill. Well, why didn't I go down there and march with those people? Why didn't I go down there and conference with these mothers that had come to get abortions? My brother-in-law went to the abortion clinics, and if a father came with the mother, he would talk to them. And a lot of times he was able, one, either to draw them to Jesus, or either to get them to call off the abortion. And I admire him for that. Why didn't I do something like that? Why didn't I stand up? Why didn't I go and do something for Jesus? What about contentment? Hebrews 13:5 said, keeping your lives free from the love of money, and be content with what you have, because God has said, never will I leave you, and never will I forsake you. So he will be there with you no matter what. Paul says in Philippians 4:11a and 12, I have learned to be content, whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. And I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry. I don't have all the answers. I do know that today, me and Richard watch a lot of old westerns. And today, on the 20 Mule Team Borax Death Valley Day thing, this woman, they were left out in the salt flats. They were running out of water. They didn't have much food. And the woman sat down and she said, listen, Our help does not come from anybody else. Our help comes from God. And if you have your Bible, I'm asking you to turn to Psalm 121. And we're going to read 1 through 8. It said, 121, 1. And mine is a NIV, so it's kind of different from a King James, but not that much. It said, I will lift up my eyes to the hills. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. He will not let your foot slip. He who watches over you will not slumber. Indeed, he who watches over Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord watches over you. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. The sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from all harm. He will watch over your life. The Lord will watch over your coming and going, both now and forevermore. That's a big promise, a big promise. So that's all I have tonight, except to say that today we have nothing to fear because God has got all this in control. And a lot of people are living in this terror and in this fear. They're afraid to go out. They're afraid to do this. Well, you can't live in fear. He didn't give us that fear. In 2 Timothy 1:7, it says, I didn't give you a spirit of fear. What did he give us? One, he gave us a sound mind. And I had to go with the sound mind thing for a long time. So we're gonna close if nobody has any comments or anything that they would like to add. But
I don't want to add it, but I do want to say something.
all right.
We've got a lot of people that are sick, and Brother Bobby is really sick. I mean, he is sick. And I got to thinking, I thought about this last month and wanted to do it. I kept putting it off. And I don't think we should really, when God impresses on us, or I feel like he impresses, then we should
Right.
do it if we feel like it's right.
Right.
And I would like to ask everyone that will to take 3 days. All through the Bible, it was 3 days that they fasted. I mean, there were
Right.
some others too, but 3 days was a big thing. And Esther fasted 3 days, and someone was talking about it the other night, 3 days. So let's go Thursday, Friday, Saturday, if you will, fast 1 meal, 2 meals, whatever you feel like fasting. And then Sunday, let's really have a prayer for all of these people that, and my mine has been with Bobby. That's who I'm really concerned about. All of these others are sick. They need prayer, but Bobby is life-threatening. We need prayer for him. And
Yeah.
so I would like for everyone that will to do that if they can.
Oh, that was good. That is something we can do. I mean, it is not something go out here on the picket line. It's something we can do that God will honor because he honors fasting and prayer and praise. He loves praise. And in Nehemiah, if you have time, read the longest prayer in the Bible from Nehemiah. And he recaptures all the Israelites' foes and problems, and shows them and reminds them how God has blessed them. So, anybody else? But let's do that Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Unless you have a physical condition that you can't. All right, anybody else?